Hi, if you live in Guildford and would like to know what's going to happen to property prices here in 2022, then here are my thoughts on the subject. Watch the video until the end to hear my tips for those wanting to sell or purchase property in the forthcoming year. Well, who would have believed it in 2021 that there would be a frenzy of demand for properties and that the market would be so active? Going back to a year ago, we were all in lockdown and we were still receiving furlough payments from the government in order to support us financially. But this is one of the keys to the success of the property market last year. While stuck at home, we were still receiving income, whether we were working or being furloughed, and we were saving money because we weren't going out. And according to the ONS, the property market was buoyant. In fact, prices increased by 10.2%. So now the average UK house is worth £268,000. So why is this? Well, there was a huge imbalance between demand and supply. People were understanding that in order to get through COVID and perhaps for the future, they'd be wanting to live in larger houses out of the country that they could enjoy, where they've got space to work from home and a garden for the children to play in. So this created a migration from London out to places like Guildford in the suburbs. And this frenzy of demand was not met by a supply of property. So why was that? Well, so supply was reduced perhaps because people were still very wary about COVID and the fact that they couldn't allow too many people into the house, if at all. And this may have put them off from selling. Secondly, they may have been looking to see whether prices would increase or not. And of course, if they had predicted what was going to happen last year, they would have been sitting on an asset worth considerably more than just a year or two previous to that. So what's happened in Guildford in terms of the price growth over the past year, you may ask? The average property price in Guildford is now $553,000. This relates to the GU postcode in its entirety. The average price increase was 6%, or the equivalent of about £30,000. On the negative side, inflation has increased because, as we know, we've all had to pay more for our petrol and diesel. Our utility costs have gone up enormously. Food prices have increased. The interest rate was also increased from 0.1% to 0.25%, the first time in many years. And the reason for this is that because prices are rising, the government are concerned about inflation. In fact, inflation reached 5% for the previous 12 months back in November. The highest rate of inflation since then was back in 2011 when it reached 5.2%. So I suppose the question remains is, will this price inflation have any effect upon people's spending power and therefore their willingness to go into the property market here in 2022? So on the plus side, it looks as though interest rates are going to continue to be relatively low. And the government are going to be very hesitant about interest rates increasing because they don't want to create a recessionary period in the economy. So all in all, this should mean that with cheap money and prices being under relative control, that people will be able to afford a new property purchase. The other interesting factor is the household income to property price ratio. This has now reached 12.67. So this suggests that people are obviously managing to afford to buy a property that's relatively highly priced compared to one of the challenges has been the lack of stock of property, certainly in Guildford. And I wonder in 2022 whether there will be more stock coming available, because now that people have seen their property increase in price, they're obviously sitting on a valuable asset, and that may give them confidence to go out and start looking for their next property and their dream home. Now, the fact that there may be more properties coming to the market could mean to say that the equation between demand and supply could help to control prices to a certain degree. The price growth will not increase so much this year as it may have done last year. So what have the organisations that provide our forecasts about the property market had to say on the subject? They all seem to agree that prices will continue to increase, but at a slower rate. And they're predicting rates of between 1 to 5% in terms of price growth. So in conclusion, I would say that the market's going to be less frenzied and buoyant as it was last year, but prices are still going to continue to increase, albeit at a possibly slower rate. But watch out for the three major factors that are always going to influence the property market. And that's the level of inflation, people's affordability, and of course, interest rates. So, thanks for watching the video until the end. Here are my tips for either selling or buying property in 2022. Tip 1. Be flexible on moving dates. The seller will find you a more attractive proposition than others if you can do so. Tip 2. If you found your dream home, but it requires some refurbishment or extension works, then please check your building costs first. These have increased enormously during COVID. Tip 3. With the prospect of interest rates going up, lock into a cheaper mortgage now. Do it now before the interest rates increase. And that way, if you move, you'll find your mortgage payments are more affordable and manageable. Tip 4. Rent a property. So sell your property first, rent a property in the meantime, and then with cash in the bank, you'll become a much more attractive proposition to the seller of your future dream home. And tip 5. While there are a lot more buyers than sellers in the market, buyers will have to become more realistic about the properties that they view and put an offer in on. Not every property will tick every box, but hopefully you'll find your dream home. And here are my top tips for sellers in 2022. Tip 1. Listen to your agent about their property price valuation. Make sure that you price your property realistically. You might be enticed to increase your property price to as high a level as possible because of the buoyant market at the moment. So you still have to price your property realistically in order to get demand for viewings, in order to therefore sell your property. Tip 2. Now that COVID has realised demand for working from home, find somewhere within your property that will make a good office or study, whether it be a separate bedroom, a garden room, or just a corner in a spacious room where people can put an office desk and chair. Tip 3. When selling your property, ensure that your local area has excellent broadband coverage and that you have the facility to have fast broadband speed to ensure that people can work from home using video to communicate over platforms like Zoom and Teams. And my final tip, tip 4, ensure that if you have a garden, it's well presented and attractive so that it will stand out to potential viewers and therefore buyers of your property. Because as we've all learnt, COVID has encouraged people to look for properties now with gardens so that they can enjoy the outdoor life when the weather's warm enough. Thanks for watching the video, and to watch my video about the 10 best things about Guildford, click on the link above.